Meg and Beth looked identical. They both had what her mother called the bird face. It was the same as her dad's and the same as her Auntie Lorna's and the same as Granny Bird's. Apple cheeks, high foreheads, wide smiles. The only difference was that Megan's hair was brown and curly like Mum's, and Bethan's was straight and black like Dad's. Rory and Reese, the twins, looked like their mum. They had Douglas faces. Low foreheads, long noses, neat bee-stung lips and narrow blue eyes peering curiously from behind curtains of long blonde hair. People always said, "Oh, such lovely-looking children." They said, "You must be so proud, Mrs. Bird." They said, "What perfect angels." And Mum would say, "Oh, you should see them when they're at home," and roll her eyes with one hand running through Rory's hair, the other wrapped around Reese's hand, and her voice full of love. "How many have you got?" Meg called out to her sister. 11. How about you? 15. Their mother appeared at the bottom of the steps with the twins in tow. "The boys have got 9 each. I think we're almost there," she said. "Think yellow," she added with an exaggerated wink. The boys let go of her hands and ran towards the slide at the bottom of the garden that had yellow handles. Bethan ran towards an upturned bucket that was actually orange. But Megan knew exactly where her mother meant. The St. John's wort bush right in front of them. She walked towards it and let her eyes roam over the clouds of yellow flowers abuzz with fat bumblebees, before they came to rest on a row of terracotta pots underneath, overflowing with eggs and small yellow puffball chicks with glued-on eyes. She was about to scoop up the eggs and chicks when her mother touched her on the shoulder, her soft, dry hands firm against Meg's sun-freckled skin. "Share them," she whispered softly, "with the little ones. Make it fair." Meg was about to complain, but then she took a deep breath and nodded. "Here," she called out to her siblings. "Look, there's millions." All three hurtled to the St. John's wort bush, and their mother divided up the remaining eggs into 4 piles and handed them to each child in turn. "Already starting to melt," she said, licking some chocolate from the edge of her thumb. "Better get them indoors." The cool of the house was shocking after the heat outside. It draped itself over Meg's bare skin like a cold flannel. Dad was pouring squash into beakers at the kitchen table. The dog was dozing on the window seat. The yellow walls of the kitchen were entirely covered over with the children's art. Megan ran her fingers along the edges of a drawing that she'd done when she was 4. It always amazed her to think it had been stuck to the wall there, in the very same place with the very same piece of sellotape for 6 whole years. She could barely remember being 4. She certainly could not remember sitting and drawing this portrait entitled Megan and Mummy, composed of 2 string-legged people with crazy hair, split-in-half smiles and hands twice the size of their bodies, suspended in a gravity-free world of spiky blue trees and floating animals. The wall of art was a conversation piece for anyone coming into the house. It spanned all 3 walls, spread itself over cupboard doors, over door frames, around corners, and even into the pantry. Dad would try and take some down occasionally to update the wall, as he'd put it. But Mum would just smile her naughty little girl smile and say, "Over my dead body." If Dad ever saw one of his children producing a piece of art, he'd snatch it away the moment it was shown to him and say, "That is so very beautiful that I shall have to put it in my special folder," and spirit it away somewhere, occasionally tucked inside his clothes, before Mum saw it and stuck it to the wall. "Now," she said, pulling her tangly hair back into a ponytail and removing her apron, "you can eat all the eggs you like as long as you promise you'll still have room for lunch. And remember, keep the foils for the craft box." The craft box was another bugbear of Dad's. It had once been a small plastic toolbox neatly filled with sequins and pipe cleaners and sheets of gold leaf. Over the years, it had expanded into an ever-growing family of giant plastic crates that lived in a big cupboard in the hall, filled with an impossible tangle of old string lengths, knots of wool, empty sweet wrappers, toilet roll middles, old underwear cut into rags, packing chips and used wrapping paper. Megan didn't really do crafts anymore. She was nearly 11 now, and Bethan had never been as creative as her sister. While the boys, of course, would rather be roaming the gardens or charging about the house than sitting with a tube of Prit and a handful of old ice lolly sticks. No one really used craft box anymore, but that didn't stop Lorelei constantly topping it up with all sorts of old junk.